Now, at this point we have done all kinds of Persona 5 challenge runs, so it's really hard to come up with something new. One thing I had in the back of my mind for a while now, which I don't think anybody has done for Persona games yet, is trying to beat the game without ever healing up your party. So here we are today, trying to beat Persona 5 Royal without ever healing either HP or SP throughout the entire game. As always, before we start, let's check the rules of the run. First of all, obviously, healing is not allowed. This includes both HP and SP healing. We also ban all skills and accessories that have some kind of auto recover function like regenerate, invigorate, life aid and more. Excluded from this list are Futaba's sub-recover skills, since she automatically learns those by level up and there is no way to prevent that. Since this only applies to backup members though, it shouldn't matter all too much anyways. We also exclude Maruki's mindfulness and wakefulness skills that can randomly trigger in battle, since we need to max his confident in order to unlock the bonus content, as well as the will seeds and palaces. The difficulty we're playing on is hard as always, and we also include dungeon completion in a single day, unless there is a scripted barrier like in Madarame or Sai's Palace. The grinding will be kept at a minimum, since there is not much of a challenge if we outlevel the boss by like 10 plus levels, so we usually try to stay within the boss's level range to make this a bit more interesting. We also ban stat ups from the jazz club. Learning new skills on Sundays is allowed, but we're not allowed to enter on any other nights to prevent the party from becoming too overpowered. The gym, as well as working out in Joker's room, are banned as well to not cap out on max HP. Other than that, we also include the classic rules like no Tetra card Makara card, no DLC personas, and of course no New Game Plus. And I think that is pretty much all. As always, I'm writing this as I go through the run, so I'm just as clueless as the rest of you at this point. We start the game, select our difficulty, and get to name our character. This time I went with the iconic Leroy Jenkins, since this felt appropriate considering our strategy will mostly revolve around storming in and going full offense. We meet Sojiro, Ryuji, and shortly afterwards end up in Kamoshida's palace, where we awaken to our persona. Nothing special to mention here, we're still playing the way the game intends us to. One thing I want to mention here is that we opened the box containing all the DLC items. The items themselves, as well as the money, is not even what we're looking for here. It's mostly the costumes in order to be able to change the battle theme. I really love the Persona 5 OST, but the battle theme, especially in Royal, isn't necessarily my favorite, and even if, there is only so much you can take of the same song playing for hundreds of times. Most of the time I went with the Saint Hermeline costume from Persona 1 because Alone Prayer is a huge banger, which is kinda ironic because P1 has a ridiculously high encounter rate, so you will probably start to hate this song specifically faster than most of the others. Since there is nothing interesting in the intro sequence, let's jump forward to the point where we have to save Best Girl Ann from Kamoshida. We grab the first couple of personas with Pixie and Bicorn, and then are off against everyone's favorite toilet demon Belphegor. A double Agi combined with a couple of hits from the other party members is enough to end the battle, and considering we leave right afterwards and get an auto heal, there is no need for HP management or anything in this battle. We get the tutorial at Best Girl Takemi's clinic, as well as the airsoft shop, where we're going to upgrade our equipment with our main focus on guns. Guns do pretty good damage early on, as some of you might remember from my gun damage only run, and they are a great way to conserve SP, especially in a setting like this where we're not allowed to heal anything. We start Takemi's confident, get Ryuji to rank 2, and then head back into the palace to take care of Kamoshida. The majority of battles are rather uneventful, so I want to focus on the few where more interesting things happen. The first one being this battle against two Silkies, where I miscalculated the gun damage and head on take big damage from a weakness bufu. Not necessarily the best start considering I'm not even at the first mini-boss yet. Speaking of which, up next is the first mini-boss Archangel. Archangel always starts the battle by charging first, which we can use to put up a Tarunda, before guarding with both Morgana and Ann, since he's very likely to attack one of the few on the following turn. Afterwards, we start doing damage with the entire party, and thanks to him composing and then charging up again on the following turn, we basically get 2 free turns, which are enough to take him out and continue on. Okay, this was not too shabby. Morgana was the only party member to take damage in this battle, so I'll definitely take this. Up next are the 2 encounters against the Eligors. Luckily, we got access to Succubus and Dormina in the meantime, which means we can just put the enemy to sleep before it attacks and prevent all kinds of incoming damage. With that, the only thing left to do is the Will Seed Gatekeeper Slime. Just like before, we once again work with sleep to make sure the enemy does not get a single attack in, though considering this is pretty much the last battle anyways, it doesn't even matter all too much. After we get a lucky shock proc, the battle is basically over, and we also retrieve the last Will Seed. The accessory is mostly for completionist purpose, as the diorama on it is not allowed, so it won't see any use in this challenge anyways. We stay in the palace for a couple of more battles, until the party reaches level 11, where Ann learns Tarunda and Ryuji learns Headbutt. Morgana also gets access to media, but this is not allowed either, so it doesn't matter. Since Kamoshida is level 11 as well, this is pretty much the perfect level to stop grinding. Before we return to the real world, we've used ourselves a slime. This one resists physical attacks and also has high endurance. With it also learning Tarunda on level 11, this is pretty much the perfect choice for the upcoming battle. We sent the calling card on the following day, and then head into the first major boss battle of the game. Let's see how we will fare without having a chance to heal. Kamoshida opens the battle casting Volleyball Assault, though we get lucky and only get a single hit on Ryuji. Once we have Tarunda and Rakunda up, we start going to work with the party. With Tarunda up, the damage is very manageable, even more so when he targets Shoka, who barely takes any damage thanks to the physical resist. After he heals up using the trophy, we focus on it, and only 2 turns later the trophy is already done, and we advance into the next phase where he will always use Golden Spike. To mitigate the incoming damage, we guard with the entire party, and once Shio is out, we get a baton pass off her to deal maximum damage to the boss. You can either beat Shiho or deal at least 300 damage to Kamoshida to prevent another spike from happening, which we can easily do with our current setup. Once Shio is gone, we send Morgana for the crown and continue doing damage. At this point, he only uses Golden Knife once each turn, which does around 25-ish damage. Unfortunately, Ryuji gets targeted several times by Kamoshida, resulting in him going down, but Shoka and Ann are still able to deal enough damage on their own for Morgana to snatch the crown. Once this happens, the battle is basically won, and literally the following turn is enough to beat Kamoshida and complete Palace number 1. While Ryuji went down, this honestly went much smoother than I had first anticipated, and considering the first couple of bosses are usually the hardest due to our limited options at this point of the game, this gives me a good amount of confidence that we can do this. Since we have a bit of downtime now, we focus on our confidence as well as building our social stats in order to unlock the next couple ones. We start the confident with Daddy Soichiro, continue with Takemi, and take up the first part-time jobs at the supermarket and the flower shop. Once Kamoshida confesses his crimes, we celebrate and get to name our party. I literally had no idea what to go for here, so I went for a little Easter egg. If you name your party the Diamonds, like Ann suggested, you get a little bit of extra dialogue here. Nothing special, just thought that some of you may not be aware of this, and since I had no idea what to name them, might as well show this little feature off. We start Mishima's confident and take the job at the beef bowl shop to get started with Yoshida as well. The first scripted trip to Mementos is rather uneventful. The only mandatory boss we have to battle here is Oberian. Again, we work with Dormina to make sure the boss stays asleep, and we can deal damage without having to worry about any incoming damage until it's down. Status elements in this game are pretty broken in case you haven't figured it out yet. Dr. Maruki joins the school, and we get the first 2 ranks of his confident as well. Like mentioned earlier, he's the only confident we have to max in order to unlock the royal content, so there is no way to prevent his passive SP healing perk from happening. I mean, technically we could mod the game, but I'd rather stay with the original version if possible, and I don't really think this is going to be that much of a difference maker overall anyways. We meet Yusuke, do the obligatory button mash in Morgana, and a couple of days later are already off into part 1 of the next palace. The random encounters for the most part are rather uneventful again until I screwed up a conversation with Mokoi, which resulted in both Morgana and Choka taking rather big damage. Luckily, this dungeon segment is not that long, so it didn't matter all too much. Ann removes what feels like her entire closet of clothes, and we return to the palace where we are now facing Nue with only Choka and Ryuji. We open the battle with a Tarunda, and Ryuji gets confused and throws a medicine on Joker. While this technically does count as a heal, Joker was at full HP anyways, so I think we can still count that. To prevent something like this from happening in future battles, we will probably sell off all recovery items before coming into a dungeon to minimize this from happening. The enemy itself is down after only a couple of attacks, and we continue on until Yusuke awakens to his persona and the next fight against Ippon Datora and a couple of Kappa Tengus begins. We knock down one Kappa Tengu with Yusuke and then pass to Joker, who takes out the remaining ones with Jack Frost. After a double headbutt from Ryuji, the boss is almost down already. He gets a single attack off which Yusuke swiftly dodges, and one more hit is enough to win here. Going forward, Yusuke will replace Morgana in the party since Morgana's main role as a healer in this setup is pretty much useless, so Yusuke will be much better suited for the main party. I think this is the first playthrough in ages where I actively use Yusuke, as my A-team usually consists of the first 4 party members, with Morgana getting replaced by Makoto once she joins the team. It's nice having some variation, though I do have to admit going without a single healer feels kinda weird. Anyways, we make our way through the palace until we run into the first mini-boss Kurama Tengu, who is accompanied by 2 more Kappa Tengus. Again, we open up with a double Mabufu to knock out the ads. Unfortunately, I forgot to talk to Iwai, so we don't have access to the shotgun yet, but luckily Ryuji's Seo procs a shock as well, so we can just hit technical hits until the enemy is down and out. This time we even managed to get through the palace without a single screw up, so we're still going strong into the second mini-boss battle, if you can call it that, against the 3 Makami, where a weakness hit combined with an all-out attack is already enough to take them out. Unfortunately, the next battle against this newer formation wasn't so lucky, and we got a nice Maaha in our face, which dealt big damage to Joker and Yusuke. Luckily, the only thing left is the fight against the Will Seed Gatekeeper or Habaki, but this one can be a huge pain if you don't know what you're doing. We get a little bit unlucky here with both Bufus not proccing a freeze, and the following flash bomb wipes both Ryuji and An. After not getting a freeze within the next 4 Bufus either, we get Mapsioed and get our first game over of the run. Luckily on the following attempt the freeze did stick, and with a combination of Bufu and Dormina, we're able to keep the enemy down until we win without taking a single hit of damage. We received the last Will Seed and are pretty much done with this dungeon now as well. Before we leave, we fight a few more battles to reach level 18 in order to fuse a Shiki Uchi. For everybody that has seen previous runs, this may not be anything new now, but Shiki Uchi is busted for how early you can get it. Not only does it completely null all physical and gun attacks, it also nulls both bless and curse damage with only being weak to nuke. Overall, by far the best persona that is available at this point of the game. With that, we leave the palace only to send the calling card a few days later. We are ready to head into the next boss fight against Shadow Madarame, and to be honest, this is a battle I was very afraid of. 4 enemies that can all do different kinds of things can quickly turn the battle against you, so let's see how we're dealing with that. The first focus is taking out the left eye while also debuffing the mouth. While the eyes do get revived, they quickly go down again, and after 2 turns, only the mouth is left with the party still going strong. Once the last piece is down, we head into part 2 of the battle. In the second half, we can use the fakes to pass the baton around and deal big damage to Madarame himself now. Unfortunately, I forgot that some fakes repel certain elements, which led to An almost wiping herself thanks to a double reflected Maragi. A fully baton pass double shot already does like 450 damage, and Yusuke is able to get rid of another 2 copies with Vicious Strike. Unfortunately, a double flame dance wipes him soon after, so the first party member is down now. Madarame summons 2 more ice fakes, which might be bad news for An considering she only has 38 HP left. Again, we pass the baton around to deal good damage, and An even manages to dodge the silent snowscape. 2 more baton pass attacks are enough to take Madarame down and beat Palace number 2 as well. When Yusuke went down, I was starting to panic for a little, but overall this still went pretty smooth and without any bigger issues for the most part. With Madarame down, we once again got some free time. We continue ranking up our confidence and go on a maid adventure which unlocks Best Girl Kawakami's confidence. At the school trip, we also get Best Girl Kasumi's confident, and she's one that we will max rather quickly since every rank up gives Choka an additional +5 max HP. Not necessarily the difference maker, but every little bit might come in handy eventually. Thanks to Ryuji, we also unlock Kichioji and the darts and billiards place. Now, this was something I wasn't quite sure of yet. Ranking up your baton pass results in the party members regaining a bit of HP when you pass it, and I was conflicted whether to allow that or not. In the end, I decided to go for it since the first rank up with Ryuji is mandatory anyways, and the amounts of HP recovered are not that big of a deal. Considering you can't really baton pass during the majority of boss fights anyways, I figured it wouldn't be such a big deal, so we allow those. And since we allow them, might as well rank up the most important party members now already, since the damage increase is quite nice, especially when comboed with technical hits later on. We meet Pancake-kun and also unlock his confidant as well. Best Girl Makoto finds out about our secret, and with that we're basically ready to head into the next palace. Before we do that, we increase our technical rank and also unlock the confidant with Yusuke. Once we're all set, we enter the palace and have to go through 2 scripted Oni fights first. To nobody's surprise, we once again make use of ailments in order to prevent getting damaged too much. Unfortunately, one of the Omis got a rampage in, but again we get lucky with every single party member dodging the attack. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the second rampage, but with a Taronda up, the incoming damage is not as bad as expected at first, and considering we only have one more fight in this segment, we should be fine. Speaking of which, Makoto awakens to her persona and we head right in there. We again work with ailments to make the battle a little easier on us, and then go to work damaging the enemies. And yeah, that is pretty much it. We managed to get through the battle without taking a single hit of damage and leave the palace afterwards, only to return on the following day again. We get the tutorial for showtime attacks and once again screw up a random encounter, which leads to the party taking big damage thanks to Magaru. Not the start that I was hoping for, but oh well. Due to our baton pass rank ups, we can regain some of the lost HP, so overall it shouldn't be such a big issue. The first real mini boss fight is against a set of Fuki, Suiki and Kinki, and if you guessed that we're working with status ailments again, you were correct with your assumption. Forget, Shock and Sleep are our best friends during those battles, and they're a great way to mitigate the incoming damage. Unfortunately, I screwed up on attempt number 1 where I woke up Kinki early and targeted the wrong enemy with the freeze, which resulted in a Vera Blast and another game over. Attempt number 2 went a little bit better, and we managed to control all 3 enemies properly. A single target hit gets Yusuke down into dangerous territory, but other than that the fight goes rather smooth and we're able to take out all 3 enemies. The next mini boss is coming up soon after, with the battle against Campanda. Once again we open the battle with Forget to prevent him from damaging the party, and then start going to work with damage. The combination of Forget right before the enemy attacking combined with the technical hit from Psyyo make quick work of the enemy, and without any problems we finish this battle off as well, thanks to a lucky stun proc towards the end. The last bigger battle in this segment is against the Will Seed Gatekeeper Cerberus. Cerberus unfortunately blocks a lot of status ailments, so we are rather limited what to do this time around. Luckily it still does block freeze, so we can use that for damage control. The fact that Cerberus is also weak to ice certainly is a nice bonus as well, and only a couple of turns later, the last enemy is down as well. The Will Seed accessory we get as a reward here is actually pretty important, since it comes with a Marakukaja effect to buff the entire party's defense. Having an AoE defense buff this early is certainly going to make a big difference in bigger boss fights, especially the longer they go, which is going to be an increasing problem the further we get into the game. With that, we leave the palace for now, only to set the calling card a couple of days later. The fight comes in 2 phases, and this is the first boss that is going to drag out a little longer, so I had no idea how this is going to go. We start the battle by debuffing the enemy and buffing the party, and then go to work with our damaging attacks. As you can see though, the damage isn't really that high. The even bigger problem that I completely forgot about is Kanashiro's missile party attack, which deals fire damage, which gives the boss a 1 more. While the incoming damage isn't the highest either, this will quickly stack up over time, especially with several 1 mores due to Yusuke's fire weakness. We got the first March of the Piggy and then sacrifice a valuable item to prevent another one from happening. From this point forward, Kanashiro will only use Fear Gas, Missile Party, and Metabolic Wave. The Fear especially is nasty since it has a high hit rate and our means of AoE status healing are still very limited. And if this wasn't bad enough already, party members who are not statused by Fear can be burned by Missile Party, which might be even worse since they lose additional HP every single turn. Luckily, the burn can't wipe a party member, but being at 1 HP is not much better either. The next attack wipes both Yusuke and Makoto, but Piggytron barely has any HP left at this point as well. While we were able to take out the Piggytron eventually, the guards take out An right after, and we game over shortly into phase 2. There is actually a rather easy cheese for that though, and it involves Shiki Uchi. With one exception, all attacks in phase 2 are physical, so Shiki Uchi's null physical is a hard counter to all of phase 2 attacks. While Kanashiro can technically use Sionga, he only seems to use that when the guards connect with Forget on the headbutt attack, and if we null physical, this never happens either. So we only need to summon our Shiki Uchi from the Compendium and make it back into phase 2 to win. Sounds easy, right? Well, not so much, because we need to make it back into phase 2 to begin with. While we did equip Yusuke with the Will Seed accessory from Madarame to eliminate his fire weakness, we get burned on Missile Party several times, and the extra 30 to 40 HP lost on every turn quickly add up to a serious problem. We game over 1 more time, but on the following attempt make it back into phase 2 though with only 5 HP left on Joker. At this point the battle is practically won though. An gets taken out rather quickly, but that doesn't matter since Joker is literally invincible with Shiki Uchi equipped. The bigger problem is incapacitating the 2 guards so they can't shield the boss from direct damage, especially since Kanashiro also likes to spam Lullaby to put Joker to sleep as well. Every time we put one to sleep, Joker gets put to sleep as well, and we have no opportunity for direct damage. Eventually, I came up with another idea. Since Shiki Uchi has Taunt, we can put Rage on one of the guards. While we can't directly attack Kanashiro this way, the guard inflicted with the ailment takes much more damage. The plan is to knock one guard out with the combination of Taunt and Mob Seal. Once the first guard is out, we should have a much easier time getting consistent damage on Kanashiro himself with only one guard left to put an ailment on. While this feels like it takes forever, this is a very solid strategy, and considering we're still invincible, as long as we keep Shiki Uchi equipped, there is nothing that could potentially go wrong here. Once guard number 1 is out, we do the same with guard number 2. Rage him, and then attack with Mapsy, which not only deals direct damage to Kanashiro himself, but also technical damage to the guard. Eventually, Kanashiro will start using Make It Rain, at which point it is only a few more turns until the boss is down, and Palace number 3 is completed as well. Admittedly, this is a very cheap strategy, but this boss fight would have been hell otherwise, so why not at least make your life a little easier occasionally. Since we got some downtime now again, we once again focus on our confidence. We unlocked the confident with Makoto and also Oya, as well as best girl Chihaya, but for her rank 1, we need to complete a momentous request first. At this point, we have stockpiled 7 requests already, so now might be a good time to head in there and get everything done. And I'm not going to go into details onto every momentous request here, because for the majority of them, the strategy is the same. Try to apply ailments if possible, ideally shock, and then do big damage using technical hits with either physical or nuke attacks. Some enemies seem to block most ailments, but those are usually taken care of quickly thanks to weakness hits. Some party members were on quite low HP throughout some of the fights, but we never were in any real danger of getting a game over. Once we're done with everything, we leave mementos for now and continue working on our confidence. This time around, we're going to romance Kawakami since I never chose her before, and I think it's only fair to get some nice and relaxing massages if you're not allowed to heal during your dungeon adventures. And I am by no means kink shaming or anything, but this may have been the weirdest romance option I've picked throughout all my playthroughs so far. Kawakami practically tells you that this idea is really bad since it can get both of them into huge troubles, but then it's just like, okay? At the end of rank 9, I wasn't even sure if the romance worked or not, or if I actually chose the wrong option. Even rank 10 felt really weird and awkward, but hey, at least now we get to go outside after dungeon exploration day, so that is nice. We also start the confidant with best girl Hifumi, and her abilities to change party members might actually come in really handy, especially in a situation like this where we're not allowed to heal anybody. With that, we are also ready to head into the next palace now, with the pyramid coming up next, and this one had me less worried, considering it probably has the easiest boss in the entire game, but let's take a deeper look into it. The first mini-boss Garuda is pretty much free. Unfortunately, we weren't able to proc a shock, but we can still put it to sleep and then go to work. The Sianga from Takumi Nakata did get us the shock proc eventually, and afterwards it's just technical hits for the win once again. Up next is Mod 1, who is not much more difficult either. Again, we work with status elements to get an advantage. Ideally, I would have liked to get a shock proc again, but the turn order kinda screwed this up, so for the most part we just went with confusion. Mod is very tanky, so the fight takes a while, but we were never in any danger, and eventually Mod is down without the party taking a single hit yet again. Mod number 2 is pretty similar, though this time it's probably even easier considering it comes with 2 adds that we can use to build a baton pass and deal bigger damage to the boss itself. Afterwards, it's once again ailment use until the enemy is down and we can continue on. The last remaining bigger battle is against the Will Seed Gatekeeper Alilad, where I promptly forgot that the enemy drains ice, and the incoming Bufodine almost wiped on, but luckily she already has access to Endure. After that, it's just a couple of fire hits combined with a lot of attacks, as well as an additional shock proc, and a few attacks later Alilad is down as well, and we retrieve the last Will Seed. And that is pretty much it for this palace. Shortly afterwards, we send the calling card and are off into probably the easiest boss fight of the entire game. Again, the fight is split into 2 parts, where part 1 is just about surviving until Best Girl Futaba's awakening happens. With Shikiuchi equipped, her Sphinx dive is nullified, so that is not a big issue either, especially considering we're getting a full heal before phase 2 anyways. In phase 2, we send Ryuji towards the ballista to shoot her down. In the meantime, we do damage with our guns as well as double shot, since Wakaba takes 5 times damage from all kinds of physical attacks. Once the ballista goes off, it's just a couple of more hits and we get Wakaba down before she gets another chance to act. Like just mentioned, this is by far the easiest boss of the entire game, so there isn't really anything special happening here at all. Since we got some downtime now, we use that to further increase our confidence. We continue working on Hifumi, max out Ryuji and An, and unlock the chess club while hanging out with Akechi. Like mentioned in the rules, we ban chess club visits for additional levels and stat points, but we do allow Sunday visits in order to get additional skills onto our party members. We max out Kasumi for now, and finally get to start a Wise Confidant as well. The gun customization is going to be incredibly useful, so we're going to try to get him up quickly as well. We max out Yoshida, increase the baton pass level on our party, and Futaba is back to full health shortly afterwards. We max out our technical rank, go visit the beach, and start off Futaba's confidant as well. Before continuing on with the main story though, we're back into mementos considering we have accumulated 10 requests at this point already, so we should get those done first. Just like on our previous visit, most fights aren't anything worthy to talk about. The strategy is mostly the same for all the battles. Try to get a shock proc and then annihilate the opposition with technical hits. With a fully maxed technical rank, we do huge damage and sometimes even one-shot certain bosses. Later bosses can become a bit of an issue due to the party being relatively low in HP already, but for the most part, we're able to control most fights with ailments to make it a bit easier on everybody. Once we're done with all the requests, including trying to battle the cheater, we leave mementos, which means we can now also start the confidant with Shinya. Before we get there though, we go visit Hawaii and hang out with our teacher, maiden, forbidden, girlfriend, fringy, whatever you wanna call her. The principal gets run over by a truck, and we're off into the next palace just a few days later. Best girl Haru awakens to her persona, and we have to battle her fiancé next. The fiancé is weak to Psy, while the ads can easily be taken out with fire magic. Once the ads are out, the mini-boss can't really do much anymore, and he follows just a few turns later. Up next are the battles against the chiefs. All of them come with ads which are weak to fire, so we can use those to get a baton pass off and quickly get through the chiefs as well. In between we also battle a Girimekala, which gets the party dangerously close due to rage dealing a lot of damage. Luckily we can get some HP back thanks to baton passing, and just a while after we get to the second mini boss fight against the army of robots, though you can barely even call this a mini boss fight. Psy magic makes short work of the enemies, and once they're all down, a single all-out attack is enough to take care of them. The last one remaining is the Will Seed Gatekeeper Melchizedek. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a shotgun early, so we worked with Forget in the meantime to mitigate the incoming damage. Other than that, it's the same as always, and a few turns later this enemy is down as well, and we retrieve the last Will Seed. With that, we send the calling card and head into the next big boss fight, which with a full baton pass and technical rank should hopefully not be a big issue. Wave 1 is quickly dispatched with fire magic, same goes for wave 2 and Psy magic. Makoto takes out wave 3 with nuke magic, and Joker takes care of wave 4 with blast magic. The last big boy wave is where things went south though. Since they are rather tanky, we're not able to take them out within a single turn. Unfortunately, I also didn't notice that Haru was being targeted by the enemies, so as soon as their turn came up, they promptly wiped her, and this was a problem considering she is our strongest Psy user. Joker, having access to only single target Psy magic, is not able to take them out in time, so they eventually respawned. At this point, I decided to throw the fight since Joker by himself wouldn't be able to take them out in time, and eventually I had to restart the battle. Attempt number 2 went much better, and after a full baton pass, we can also deal huge damage with Girimekala and Triple Down, so we're easily able to take them out in time, causing the last enemy to spawn. Luckily, this is one we can easily control with the help of ailments. Both freeze and shock work exceptionally well against the enemy, so we can get through the entire phase without being attacked a single time. Once he's down, we just guard Haru's explosion, and a single hit to Okumura ends the battle and therefore palace number 5. We're still doing rather well. This is honestly going better than I anticipated at first, but the long boss fights are still ahead of us, so we'll see if this continues on or not. Since we got some more downtime now again, we once again work on, you might have already guessed it, confidence. We finally get to start off Shinya, and also get to finish off the next couple of confidence after completing the corresponding requests earlier. We accidentally stumble into an unknown palace where Kasumi awakens to her persona, but the one fighter is not really worth mentioning either. Knock it down, apply shock, and yeah, you know the deal by now. One thing I want to mention here is the one-on-one battle in Mementos against Futaba's uncle. While this is not a dangerous fight, the enemy still hits really hard, and the Megiddola caught me off guard and wiped Joker on the first attempt. Second time, I made sure I was properly set up, and we were easily able to complete the battle. Okumura suffers a mental shutdown on live television, but on a more positive note, we're now able to plant vegetables. Akechi steals our takoyaki at the school festival before blackmailing the party into joining him, but before we head into the next palace, we still get to spend some time with this run's waifu. This is the first kinda interesting romance cutscene involving Kawakami, since it's something completely different than the usual awkward stage appearance. This does not mean that I'm warming up to her as a waifu option, but hey, it's something. With that, we head into the casino next, and I would really like to talk about some of the mini bosses or enemy in this palace, but the strategy is still the same for the most part. Try to apply shock and then wreck the enemies using technical hits. This works for pretty much everything up until Nebiros. I am pretty sure Nebiros nulls all ailments, so we have to work with the more classic approach here. Nebiros also likes to use Brain Check to brainwash the entire party. Unfortunately for him though, we open up the battle with Bullet Hail, meaning the mini-boss is already down to half health before he can do anything, and the party's damage is high enough to get him down before he gets a single turn in. Yatayu in the next battle, however, one-shot Choker with Magarudine after we were not able to stick a shock with the ailment gun. On the second try, we did proc the shock, and then the battle is basically free. The last battle in part 1 of the casino is against Norn, who likes to fully heal itself, so ideally we'll take it down within a single turn. While I'm pretty sure you can put ailments on it, we were not able to proc a shock this time around, and Norn does quite some damage to the party. Luckily though, we can get a few hits in, including a double elbow drop showtime before its second turn, which is already enough to win the battle and end part 1 of the casino. The following day we visit Sai in the courtroom, and with that we return into the palace for part number 2. The second half of the palace in general is much shorter. You only have one real section to go through where I got lost for a while, which is literally the first time ever happening, before running into the next mini-boss Rajanaga. While this one nulls electricity, we can still shock it thanks to our ailment gun, and yeah, I don't think I need to further elaborate. Shock and pummel until victory. Again, we managed to get through the fight without taking a single hit before we're off into the Solar Choker Gauntlet. And this one is laughable if you know what you're doing. With the equipped Rangda, we can hardwall the majority of battles here. The two Ganesha at the beginning exclusively use physical attacks, which we can just repel back at the enemy. Fight number 2 is against 3 Rangda of their own, which we can easily one-shot with Mazeonga, and the final battle is against Thor, who again exclusively uses physical attacks, so we wait for him to charge up and then wipe himself thanks to the repel. With that, the only battle remaining is against the Willseed Gatekeeper Bale. And yeah, shock is a thing here as well. I would really like to talk more about certain enemies and strategies and stuff, but the truth of the matter is that shock plus technical hits and baton passes pretty much annihilate everything that is not immune to ailments. Anyways, we retrieved the last Willseed and are now basically ready to battle Shadow Sai on the last day. Until then, we still have some time, so we use that to once again work on our confidence and also max Akechi's baton pass rank. I am not sure I'm going to need him that much, but looking further ahead at the Choker Akechi segments in the Royal part, it certainly doesn't hurt, especially considering we have maxed out the majority of confidence at this point anyways. Since Akechi always wants to play 701, he's the only party member you cannot max out in a single game of darts. Nothing really that important, just a little side note. We're also heading back into Mementos since we already accumulated 8 requests again, so better get those done in time. As for strategies, it's more of the same. If the enemy can be shocked, we do just that and basically win the battle. Rewatching this, I was looking for battles that are immune to ailments or maybe gave me a bit of trouble, but literally every single request on the segment can be shocked, so it's easy work. We also finally get to start off the Confident with Haru. She unlocks rather late into the game, but luckily we have maxed pretty much every other party member at this point, so getting her up should not take a lot of time. Then there is also the rank 8 Akechi battle we have to get through. This one is usually rather easy since he likes to go off a scripted pattern starting with Megaton Raid, then Aiga, Kuga, and then start over again. By switching around the proper personas, you can nullify or repel every attack thrown at you. Once he drops below half, he will also add Megiddola to the mix, and here I made the mistake of not properly paying attention. After using Megiddola, he usually starts his cycle with Megaton Raid again. Unfortunately, I thought he would go for Kuga, so not only did Akechi damage Choker, he also unluckily crit him and then finished him off. On our second attempt, we made sure to have the correct persona equipped once the Megiddola happens, and we can easily win this time around. Since Maruki is going to leave school soon, we also make sure to get him up to rank 9 to ensure we get the Royal exclusive parts later on. We also maxed the majority of other confidence, including Shinya, Iwai, and Hifumi. Especially Shinya's ability to pierce gun immunities is really nice since this gives us a way to apply gun elements to literally every enemy out there. After we get rank 10 on Maruki, the day of reckoning is upon us and we hand over the calling card to Sai before going back into the palace. Phase 1 is basically free as we go through the scripted turns to catch her cheating before transitioning into phase 2, and here is where it gets a little more interesting. Shadow Sai will spin the roulette to change her affinities where her chosen element is always one that a party member is weak against. The boss hitting one Morse in a setup where we can't heal is obviously very bad, so we will also throw out an additional Masukokasha to further increase the party's chance of dodging attacks. Technically you could also just guard with said party member to avoid the one more, but usually they are the only ones that can hit the boss's neutral element during that phase, so we went with evasion up on the party and accuracy down on the enemy, and this seemed to work pretty well for the most part. Also shoutouts to An for still hitting for almost 250 damage even through the resist, thanks to the Fire Amp accessory we bought during Sunday shopping. On her second roulette, she rolls fire, which is pretty much the worst thing that could have happened, considering Yusuke is the party member with the lowest magic stat, and An is now completely walled for a few turns. Even though Sai occasionally gets the weakness hit, she often likes to follow it up with a physical attack on Choka, who repels it back at her thanks to Rangda. Once Yusuke drops to lower HP, we're also replacing him with Ryuji for another physical attacker. Another thing I quickly want to mention is that you may see the party member's HP go up occasionally. This is not because of a manual heal, but rather because Futaba's support that can heal up the party for a little. This was the only big mistake I made during this run. For some reason I thought her auto heal is tied to her level, when in fact it unlocks with rank 1 of her Confidant. Unfortunately, I didn't notice this until after I was already done with the run. Technically, this probably should not be allowed, but overall, it didn't make a big difference for the majority of fights, so I think we can leave it at that. Now back onto the boss fight. The next roulette spin drops an Almighty, and while Shadow Sai is now neutral to everything, her attacks also become a lot more dangerous. Brutal Impact would do a lot of damage, but luckily every party member is able to dodge the attack, with Choka repelling it back for huge damage. Afterwards, it's literally only one more turn, and Shadow Sai is down and out as well. This battle was honestly much easier than I had first expected. I was worried about the later boss battles giving me a hard time considering they take longer to beat, and with us not being allowed to heal, this could become a problem quickly. We go through the next hour of cutscenes, including a cameo by Kasumi, Choka convincing Sai in very cryptic words without using the name Akechi, even though it's been clear for ages who the villain is, and a very nice splat on the table that would make Quentin Tarantino proud. This time around, there is not that much downtime as we only have a couple of days before we already head into the next palace, and this was the one that had me worried the most. While we can regenerate HP with baton passing occasionally, the length of this dungeon could lead to very serious HP and SP issues, especially in later fights. We have a total of 5 official mini-boss fights, the multi-phase fight against Akechi, and a couple of more mandatory battles coming up. Mini-boss number 1 is against Yamato no Orochi, and this one is not a big deal because once again, say it with me, Shock makes this battle free. Even though the enemy recovers before we can beat it, it usually opens up with Concentrate, which gives us another free turn to finish it off without taking a single hit of damage. Mini-boss number 2 is against Forneus, and I said this in a previous video, but I really like that Forneus is a high level persona in this game. In the majority of games, Forneus is usually rather low leveled, so this is a nice change of pace. We also bring in Haru here, since Forneus likes to brainwash the entire party, and Haru's passive ability greatly decreases the chance of being inflicted with ailments. All of that isn't even needed though, because once again, Shock takes care of everything. While Forneus does have insta-heal to recover immediately, the couple of hits we're able to get in are enough to win the battle and continue on. We also finally do the Twin Warden's Confidant. This was something I totally neglected throughout the run so far, but since we have a ton of money available anyways, might as well go through the entire Confidant now. We also fuse ourselves a new Giri Mikala and give it the Grow 3 passive since we wanted to get to level 50 to learn Repel Physical, but more on that later. For now, we continue with mini-boss number 3 Hanuman. Hanuman is being accompanied by 2 Garudas, which he likes to enrage for extra damage. Luckily, the boss is weak to ice, with the Garudas being weak to electricity, so we can use that to our advantage to pass the baton around and deal some good damage. We wipe both Garudas before they can get a single hit in, and Hanuman himself can't do much any longer either. The Swift Strike doesn't do a lot of damage, and we're able to finish the mini-boss off the following turn with the help of some nice showtime damage. Giri Mikala learns Repel Physical shortly afterwards, so before continuing, we head back into the Velvet Room to use it as an ingredient during our Trumpeter fusion. Having a Trumpeter with Repel Physical is going to be very important later on, so we might want to take care of that early, especially since Trumpeter is also the first persona to learn Debilitate, which makes debuffing the enemy a lot easier as well. Before we head into the next mini-boss, we're going through the Willseed Gatekeeper first, which is a combination of Kali with 2 Dakinis. Once again, we use Shock to our advantage to get a good amount of damage in. Unfortunately, they're tanky enough to recover, but luckily we can just reapply Shock if needed and continue on until we're done and retrieve the last Willseed. For mini boss number 4, we switch Haru for An in since the side damage is going to be pretty useful here, and the passive status element reduction also helps against Nocturnal Flash. This time around, the mini boss Oberon is weak to Nuke, while the Titanias are weak to Psy, so we can pass around the baton for some nice extra damage again. Oberon likes to resummon the Titanias, which is actually a good thing since we can use those to bounce off weakness hits for additional baton passes. With that, it's only a couple of more hits until the enemy is down as well, and only one letter of recommendation is still missing. For the last mini boss, we replaced Makoto with Haru since she was pretty much out of SP, and we can easily buff our defense with items as well. The initial Maigon luckily only hit An since we haven't had a chance to put up buffs and debuffs yet. Once everything is set up, we start going to work on the enemy. This version of Ongyoki is neutral to everything, but also nulls all ailments, which certainly makes this a bit trickier. Haru mostly uses one-shot kill in hopes of maybe landing a critical, but we're not getting very lucky here. Considering physical attacks take HP, you want to use those very carefully. Before the next Maigon, we switch to a persona which repels Curse to reflect some damage back at the enemy. Unfortunately, this time around, both An and Haru got hit, which put An into Endure already. Other than that, the battle is relatively simple though. The enemy has a set pattern, so there are no big surprises, and eventually we're able to get him down and retrieve the last letter of recommendation. Before we're able to finish off the palace though, there is still the battle against Akechi coming up, and with our party not in the best of conditions at this point, this could become rather interesting. Because of this, we once again make some changes to our party, replacing An with Ryuji before going into battle. Thanks to the electricity weakness of Cerberus in phase 1, we can get rid of it quickly. Ryuji gets put into Endure pretty much immediately, as well as Yusuke on the following turn. While the enemies take a lot of damage, they also dish out huge numbers, so we switch Morgana in for Ryuji before transitioning into the second phase. Akechi immediately gets repelled by Joker, and we get a lucky Wakefulness, which certainly helps things. Megiddo Laon gets blocked by Futaba, so all party members are still alive and well. Luckily, we are able to beat him soon afterwards and transition into last part against Loki Akechi. Since this counts as a separate battle, the Endure status also gets renewed, so this is a nice added bonus. The plan to dodge the majority of attacks with Debilitate and Masakokaja seemed to work well, as the party manages to dodge Akechi's first 2 attacks. Since Yusuke is pretty much out of both HP and SP, we bring Makoto in for the extra defense buff. Akechi often likes to waste his turns casting either Tetrakarn or Makarakarn, which we can easily break before continuing on doing damage. The most dangerous part about this battle is definitely the second phase of the fight, where he will start using AoE magic damage, and this is something we definitely don't want with our party's current condition. Luckily with Trumpeter, Joker is pretty much immune against the majority of Akechi's attacks, though our party members mostly have their Endure triggered. Akechi at this point is almost down though, so it's only a few more attacks until we are able to barely squeeze out a victory. Like expected during the beginning of the palace, we were barely able to squeeze by. While the battles themselves are not that dangerous, the sheer length of this palace made it really difficult and also pretty close towards the end. We sent the calling card on the following day and then are off into the big battle against Shido. Similar to the palace, this one could become problematic due to its amount of phases and just overall length of the battle. Now on to Shido himself. The first battle consists of 3 phases where in phase 1 he's immune to all physical damage. Because of this, we open up with Morgana, An and Makoto and start going to work. Shido mostly focuses on physical attacks here, but unfortunately An especially seemingly isn't very good at dodging those. Once Shido transitions into phase 2, we replace both An with Yusuke, as well as Morgana with Ryuji to quickly charge through the enemy. Shido loves to exploit weaknesses here, but luckily with buffs and debuffs, as well as the evade passives, the party is able to dodge the majority of those. In his last phase, Shido is neutral to everything, so we can go all out now. Shido is able to get one more hit in on Makoto before we're able to beat him and transition into fight number 2. Again, we open up by buffing and debuffing and then start putting out the damage. Bloodbath can occasionally put fear onto party members, but luckily we can easily heal that with Makoto. His last Mega Dolan does little damage with buffs and debuffs up, and we transition into phase 2 on the following turn, where Shido becomes much more dangerous. We get another lucky wakefulness since Joker is almost out of SP, and once we're done setting up, we continue doing damage. The party is starting to get rather low on HP. We switch Makoto for Haru, and after Yusuke has his Endure triggered, Futaba has to intervene to avoid him going down. Luckily, we have already done enough damage to transition into the last phase, where it's now solo Joker. In this phase, Shido has a very set pattern, so this is basically free as long as you bring the correct personas with you. We go through the last few turns, switching around personas, and are able to finish Shido off eventually and complete this palace for good. While this was definitely the most dangerous boss so far, I was still surprised that it went as smooth as it did. We didn't game over and in fact didn't even lose a single party member, so this makes me rather confident for the next few segments. With that, we got a little bit of downtime again, so we quickly head into Mementos and complete the last couple of open requests. Just like before, there isn't much to mention here considering the majority of enemies can either be stunned or frozen, and technical hits make short work of the enemies. Other than that, there isn't really a lot left to do anymore. We have maxed out all confidence and things like jazz club setups or training in the gym are banned. Because of that, we mostly hang out with our max confidence and get some more decorations for our room. I don't think I have ever maxed out all the decorations in this game since a couple of them are only available on single days or have rather specific requirements to get. Maybe I'll do a video on that in the future. Would you be interested in a Persona 5 full decorations video? Let me know in the comments. With that, we skip forward to Christmas Eve, where we return to Mementos to get rid of it for good. The majority of battles here are nothing special, since we can once again use stun and freeze to our advantage to easily get through those, so we skip right forward to the boss battle against the Holy Grail. The first battle against the Grail is scripted as always. Do some damage, get through the color changes, and then get ejected out of battle. The party dies, but not really, and we find out about Igor's true identity. This also includes one of my least favorite parts about the game, where we're getting back our party together. Every single party member is like really depressed and just like, oh, this is all for nothing, we should have never done this in the first place. And then Joker's just like, nah, you're fine. And they're like, yeah, you know what? It is fine, let's go save the world. I don't know, maybe this is just me, but this always felt really awkward for some reason. Anyways, once we got our party back together, we end up in apocalyptic Tokyo and now have to go through several archangels next, with the first one being Uriel. Uriel starts the battle by summoning 2 angels. We can use their curse weakness to get a baton pass going and deal big damage to the boss itself. We do that and beat all enemies literally on our first turn of doing damage. Archangel number 2 is Raphael. He specializes in physical attacks, and while we have no ads to bounce baton passes off this time around, the fight is not really a big problem either. Raphael likes to buff himself for several turns before finally attacking, and we have no problem putting debuffs back on him. He doesn't even get to the point of getting a charged sword dance, as we're able to beat him before that happens. With that, we continue on to angel number 3, Gabriel. Unlike Raphael, Gabriel specializes in magic, and this is a little more dangerous considering she likes to exploit the party members' weaknesses for one-mores. Luckily, the combination of debilitate and evade skills once again let party members dodge, and before Gabriel can become an issue, she's already gone again, which leaves us with the last Archangel, Michael. Like Uriel before, Michael starts the battle by summoning 2 angels, which we can once again use to bounce baton passes off. Ideally, you want to get rid of the angels quickly, since they like to use Recarmdra to fully heal Michael again. The boss itself likes to charge and then use sword dance, but again our party's evasion game is too strong and we're able to dodge the majority of hits. Towards the end, he also uses Megalodon, but even this one doesn't do a whole lot of damage either. And yeah, that is pretty much it. Other than that, it's the same as always. Keep buffs and debuffs up, charge and concentrate, and then go to work until the enemy is down. And here is where I wasn't sure how to continue. Usually before every big palace boss, you get a free heal, though in this one, you could directly head into battle. Considering we had a free heal every time up until now, I think it's only fair to heal once at Lavenza before approaching the boss. I did however save on a different slot though, because I wanted to go back and do the battle even without a heal before. That being said, let's head into fight number 2 against the Holy Grail. We send Yusuke to cut the cables and start buffing and debuffing as always. Once the cables are gone, we basically already won, and here is where I got a little bit too cocky. When the Grail charged up for his big attack, I was pretty sure I would be able to beat it before this happens, so I let all my buffs and debuffs run out and went on full offense. Unfortunately, it was not enough, and the Grail did huge damage on the entire party, triggering several endures. Guess that free heal wasn't even worth that much except the SP, considering we're heading into Yaldabaoth with 2 party members on 1 HP or 4 after the level up. Early Yaldabaoth is relatively easy. The only attack he uses is Arrow of Light, which doesn't do much damage and also often misses with buffs and debuffs up. Unfortunately, Ann got her Endure triggered pretty much immediately, and with her being my number 1 DPS, this could become a problem quickly. Once we're all set up, the plan is to quickly get through Yaldabaoth's HP to force him to add a new weapon every turn, therefore cancelling out all other sources of damage. Unfortunately, this didn't quite work like I was hoping for at first, and the weapons did get a few attacks every now and then. For the magic users, we usually use the AoE version of their spell, so we can get rid of some of the ads every now and then at least, but this is still becoming dangerous rather quickly. Both Yusuke and Makoto got their Endure triggered, so at this point I decided to switch up the setup a little, first replacing Yusuke with Haru, and the following turn on with Morgana. Thanks to our buffs and debuffs, we can still evade the majority of the attacks, and soon after, Yaldabaoth is already charging up for his big attack. Do I really want to try to go for the kill now when it already almost cost me against the Holy Grail? The answer is yes, because I seemingly don't learn from my mistakes at all. Luckily though, this time calculations were a bit more accurate and we can get the final hit on Yaldabaoth way before the big attack goes off. After a picture perfect headshot, we save the world, Akechi takes the bullet for Joker, this time not literally, and we get to spend Christmas Eve with our waifu before the new year approaches and everything becomes super weird. Before we get everything back to normal though, we enter the final palace with Kasumi and Akechi to further investigate. The only battle worth mentioning here is the final one against Hastur with only Joker and Akechi. Joker dodges most of its attacks or can repel them, but Akechi takes full damage and also gets feared quite a lot. My biggest fear here literally was that Akechi would go down before we were able to beat the enemy. Remember, this is a battle you have to win via scripted showtime attack, so if Akechi goes down, this is not gonna be a thing. Hastur did get Akechi all the way down to his Endure, but luckily we still made it in time before the enemy was able to get another shot in. Now I am actually curious if Akechi is scripted to just dodge everything once he's down to 1 HP or not. Anyways, we throw out the showtime, win the battle and complete the segment. After convincing the entire party that the hard cruel world is better than living in your dream reality, we return back to Maruki's palace where Sumire gets in our way. This battle is literally free as long as you got something that nulls, repels or drains physical attacks, since that is literally the only thing she does. We just put the battle on auto and wait until Sumire destroys herself. The rest of the party returns and now we have to battle Sondrion with 2 Byakuya. We can use the ads to once again build a baton pass and unleash maximum damage onto the enemy. Sondrion will occasionally drain a Byakuya to restore HP, but the amount of damage we're dealing is too high for her to keep up, and just a few turns later, she goes down and we're one step closer to completing the challenge. Sumire joins the party and we head back into the palace for part 1. The segment here is rather short. The battle against Chimera and Dionysos is pretty much free, and we continue on until this little encounter against another Chimera, where I promptly hit the triple down into a high counter and wiped myself. Not only was this unlucky, I also haven't saved since coming back into the palace, so I literally had to do the entire thing to this point one more time. Annoying, but nothing really too big of a problem. I just want to show you guys that even after several challenge runs of this game, I still make stupid mistakes like this every once in a while. With that being said, the final battle of this segment is against everybody's favorite demon Scathach and Cu Chulainn. Longtime viewers know what I'm talking about. We start the battle buffing the party and got lucky that nobody took damage from the Mabufodine. Once again, we make use of the electricity weakness to get rid of the first enemy quickly. Afterwards, it's just another concentrated attack and an additional showtime to get rid of number 2 as well, and we are already done with part 1 of the palace and have to head into Mementos next. Before we do that though, we start part 2 of Samira's Confidant, as well as getting the third awakenings on all party members. The extra stats and resistances are nice to have. The special moves for the most part are useless since they take way too much SP in a setup where we can't restore them properly. We also bring Lavenza to our room in order to get the Enduring Soul Scale card. I honestly think that we're not going to need it at this point of the game any longer, but better be safe than sorry. We also bring Samira's Baton Pass rank up to max, just in case we might have to use it later too. Once we're done with everything, we head into Mementos and there really isn't anything special to mention anymore. We still have a couple of quests to do, but we're at a point where our party can easily demolish everything, even if status ailments won't work. As soon as we reach the top, we're ready to head into part 2 of the palace on the very next day. The first mini-boss is Surt, who has great affinities against half of our party. Because of this, we go into the battle with Morgana, Haru and Akechi instead of our usual setup. Surt luckily is not immune to freeze, so we can once again use this to our advantage to get a couple of technical hits and good damage in. I know I keep repeating myself, but again, it's only a couple of turns before the enemy is down and we can continue on. The Will Seed Gatekeeper Fafnir is literally free. Even though it has great elemental affinities, it is once again not immune to freeze, so we use that to our advantage to get full damage on physical hits and quickly get rid of the enemy to retrieve the last Will Seed of the game. The very last mini-boss of the game is Siegfried, and again, ailments destroy him quickly. This time it is Shock that we can use to bounce off technical hits, and yeah, a concentrated technical Baton Pass Atomic Flare easily does enough damage to take out the enemy and win the battle. With that, the only thing left in our way is the battle against Maruki. We kill some time on the last couple of days, hand over the calling card to Maruki, and then are ready for the final battle. And spoiler alert, but there is literally no way we can lose that fight. Remember back in Shido's castle when we fused our Trumpeter and inherited Repel physically from Giri Mikala? This battle was the reason why we did that. Joker literally repels all of Maruki's normal attacks, and the nice thing about this, the repelled spells inflict full damage and are not mitigated through the tentacles, so we could theoretically just stall out and wait for Maruki to destroy himself, but he starts spamming Megidolaon after around 40 turns, and doing the fight like it is intended is also way more fun. Everybody who has played this game can probably still remember the strategy here. Use the weaknesses of the tentacles to get rid of them, and pass the baton around in order to do full damage to Maruki. Phase 1 is rather easy and quickly taken care of. In Phase 2, Maruki comes up with a few new tricks. First of all, there will be prohibited actions each turn like no magic, no healing, which we don't care about, no support skills or whatever. This can easily mess up your cycle of buffs, debuffs, weaknesses, etc. So this is definitely something to keep an eye on. He also adds fear into his arsenal now, and combined with the Dizzy, there is a good chance that Maruki himself will land technical hits here and there, which we obviously want to avoid. After a few turns, Maruki will use Tyrant's Dance, which he follows with Tyrant Chaos for huge damage even with a guard up. Luckily no party member had their Endure triggered yet, but we're getting close, especially with Yusuke who needs HP for his physical attacks. Maruki will also occasionally focus his attacks on a single character, but with a guard up, the damage is easily negated. Since the battle still does take quite a while, we're getting to the point where some party members are either getting close to going down or are out of SP. Because of this, we bring in Sumire and Haru from our bench during later parts. Akechi is a rather bad choice for this battle since Eternal Radiance is a blast attack, and like mentioned earlier, you want to avoid Maruki getting one Morse, so he won't be used during this phase at all. Both Ahn and Sumire have their Endure triggered by the second Tyrant Chaos, but Maruki at this point is pretty much done anyways, and we can complete the battle on the following turn. We're not quite out of the blue yet, because there is still one more fight left to do. Well, technically 3, but the last 2 are scripted, so yeah. Anyways, we now have to go through solo Maruki. The strats are the same as always with buffs and debuffs, though debuffs don't do a lot since you get targeted by Azathoth, whom you can target in this battle. What's even worse though is that once you're about a third through Maruki's HP, he will use Revitalized Soul, which deals a fixed 300 damage to the entire party and literally triggers everybody's Endure except Joker. Because of this, we switch around the entire party, but now Azathoth will start doing huge damage to a single character each turn, so we have to be quick before he starts wiping party members. Joker gets his Enduring Soul triggered, thank god we got that skill card earlier, but we're doing good damage with our attacks. A few more attacks are enough, and that is it everybody. We still have the last 2 scripted battles against Azathoth, including the Fisticuffs battle against Maruki, but at this point the challenge has been completed. And to be honest, with a few exceptions, this was not as bad as I first anticipated. Sure, the random heals from Futaba might have helped to some extent, but I think we would have been fine even without it. My biggest fear was struggling against later bosses due to the length of the battles, but with us being able to switch out party members, this was not that big of an issue either. I think this is my first playthrough where I made extensive use of the party switching mid battles, so maybe Hifumi as waifu would have been more appropriate, but whatever. Anyways, this is probably the last run of 2024 since it's already mid-November, and I doubt that I will get another run finished in time before the end of the year. The channel has seen good progress, and I appreciate every single one of you watching my runs. With that being said, special thanks go out to this video's supporters Novarel, Shurka and Laura Nemeth. Becoming a channel member or joining the Patreon gives you 48-hour early access to all videos, among other small perks, but enough of the plugs for now. That is it for me this time. I hope I'll see all of you again next time as well. Until then, take care.